Hey, what's up, classic TV fans? My name is Rick 9G. Welcome to the 9G Monster Special. We have been looking at some of the classic Universal monsters. I've already covered Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and now The Mummy, the 1932 production starring, yes, again, Boris Karloff. What a living legend that man was at the time. Now, either I've been covering bloopers or facts, but in this video, I think with what I've got compiled, I think we'll take a little bit of both. We'll take a look at some bloopers as well as some really cool facts about the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, this is a great kind of look at what to expect, and I think it's brought a lot of people to take a look and starting to rewatch these movies, and I think it's fantastic. So let's get started. Now, this is similar to one of the other videos that I made, but let's look at the opening credits of the film. It's actually really cool, it's really creative, and there's a lot of 3D movement. Remember, this is 1932. It is gorgeous to look at. But if you look at some of the main cast of characters and actors, you'll notice that Pharaoh here is misspelled. Not only in the opening sequence, but yep, look at this right here. This is the closing credits that was used. Pharaoh is also misspelled. Maybe the letter A was just too costly to put it in there. Now, who directed this film? Well, his name is Karl Freud. Now, I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly, but I will tell you this. I'll name him Karl just for the sake of this video. He is also the man who was 20 years later hired by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz to be the director of photography for the show I Love Lucy. It's one of the shows that I cover basically most on this entire channel. If you're a fan, you definitely need to check out my videos because I think you'll love it. I have over 300 of them. Anyway, he was the director here and was used for I Love Lucy, and he, along with Desi Arnaz, created the 3-camera system where you have 3 cameras rolling at the same time with a live audience behind the cameras, and they could put all of this and the sound on film. It was pretty revolutionary, and it still is used today. So now you know that the same genius behind I Love Lucy is the same genius behind The Mummy. That's really cool. Now, let me tell you that we cannot talk about this film without mentioning the name Boris Karloff. Now, there's a lot of discussion back and forth on how long it really took to put all the makeup on and off, so I won't get into that, but I will let you know this, that there's so many layers of cotton that were glued to his face to create that very rough, wrinkled look on the character that he played, the Mummy, but Imhotep. Now, all that cotton, unfortunately, made him unable to move his facial muscles enough to even speak. And again, there's a lot of discussion and argument as to why he went through all of this rigor putting all this makeup on. Because if you look closely, there was a wooden dummy that was used during the close-up. Now, how do you know this? Because you can tell here, and I'll point him out to you, this dummy has clogged nostrils. So they did not use Karloff here so that he had to stay in that position for long. They only used Karloff for the specific scene where his eyes slowly open up, the one I'm showing you here. And there was a difference. So yes, he had to go through that makeup, but they used a dummy for basically 90% of these scenes except for that close-up. And I guess that's why they did the work, just to get that. What's also interesting to note is that Karloff was never shown walking or even standing in the full mummy bandages throughout this entire film. The only time is when he was in that coffin, which at that point was that dummy, and then we only saw the bandages going through the doorway, so the trailing bandages, and then later on he's wearing different outfits that cover up his entire bandage look. So it's really interesting how they would spend so much work to do that. Now, the predecessors to this film, Dracula and Frankenstein, both coming out in 1931, were fantastic hits with audiences. The Mummy was the only one at this time that was not based on a novel and was inspired by the real-life opening of the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. When we think of films like this, we usually think everything went peacefully, hunky-dory, and so forth, but that's not true, especially with this film. There is actually great tension between the main actress, Zita Johann, and the director himself, Karl Freud, who disliked each other incredibly. According to Johann herself, it was the first day of filming when Freud attempted to portray her to the producers as a temperamental actress who was very difficult to work with. Of course, we can go back and forth on who was right and wrong, but the whole idea that the director and the main actress didn't get along, that definitely brings a lot of tension on screen, and well, didn't really shine through in the performances. Now, have you ever thought about the most expensive movie poster ever in all of history? Well, yes, it is that of the 1932 film The Mummy. Now, the most money was paid for this movie poster. It holds the record at $453,500. Wow. Now, a couple of humorous things here in bloopers. Let's take a look here when Imhotep breaks the glass in the display case. He does this with his bare hands. Well, if you look closely and notice, there is no glass here at all. They just used the sound effect. There would be shards of glass going everywhere into the sarcophagus and so forth. But no, I guess they did that to keep Boris safe, and I do completely agree with it. It's just comical to see him punch through air and then hearing that sound effect. Now, if you look at the flashback scenes where Imhotep is being mummified, his legs are bandaged together. For the long shots, yes, they are bound together in the sarcophagus, which I mentioned earlier was the dummy. But when the mummy comes to life, his legs are bandaged separately, allowing him to walk. Also, at the beginning of the wrappings, you'll notice that his arms are bound to his chest, but at the end, they're shown wrapped separately. Of course, this allowed him to reach for the scroll later on. Now, when the character of Helen is compelled by Imhotep, she takes a cab to Cairo, to the museum. Now, the cab pulls up alongside the car in which the Wempels are about to leave. Now, notice here, I'll point them out, the tire tracks. They're exactly matching the ones of the cab that will make its way on camera in just a little bit. Why is that there? Well, these tracks were left there when the cab was approaching, or when it happened a few times during rehearsal, and now we're seeing the final shoot here where we see the tracks again. It's pretty funny. Now later on, when Helen leaves the dance under the mummy spell, she gets inside the cab, and then the cab arrives at the destination. She gets out, and she never pays the cab driver. Now you may say, well, that's because she was under a spell. Well, apparently the cab driver was as well, because he didn't even ask her for the fare. That's very, very interesting blooper that was put in there. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know which one, which fact, or which blooper you enjoyed the most and why, or maybe one that I may have missed. What do you think about this movie, The Mummy? I can say I've seen all of the Universal films in regards to the monster classics, and I like this one the least, but I still think it's an alright film. I still think it's pretty good. I don't think it's bad. It's just the one that I gravitated toward the least out of all of them. Let me know your thoughts down below. There are some really good moments in the movie, some very creepy ones as well. Thanks so much for your support. I love doing this, looking at the classic horror monsters. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful. Thank you to everyone for their support, especially my Diamond tier patrons: Greg S., Ricky, Sally N., Citizen Kane 359, David D., Kevin K., Vito L., and honorary patron Verbal Volley. If you want to be listed here, make sure to check out the links in the description. Thank you.